My top 5 ways to convince somebody on an anti-gun spectrum to either ease up their views towards anti-gun rhetorics or to just convince them to honestly just go out and get a gun. This depends on their severity. Like, do they want to repeal the Second Amendment, or do they just want to ban high capacity magazines? It depends on what their motivations are. I will tell you that one thing that I see very consistently is they do not have a gun. So they're telling you not to have a gun because they don't have a gun. And that's very different than somebody who is, say, an off duty police officer with their gun doing civilian things, telling you, oh, I'm an officer, I can have a gun, but you can't. When somebody's like gone to the Peace Corps without a gun, or hiked through Alaska and bear country without a gun, I do give them the respect that they don't personally have a gun and they've done some badass stuff. So it's not like they're telling me to do something that they aren't doing themselves. Okay. Here's the 5 ways that I've found. Number 1 is explain existing laws. A lot of these people have no idea what laws are there. All they know is that the media told them ban guns. So they're like, okay, well, I don't even own one, so I should just ban them, whatever. Wouldn't affect me any. So when you explain to them the items on a 4473 form, when you explain to them the Nix report when it is properly done, when people do report people to the FBI database, when you explain to them that these things already exist and they just need to be enforced better, it really, really eases them, because a lot of them thought you could just go buy a fully automatic AK-47 without a background check just by walking into a gun show or walking into a gun store. They just had no idea. And think about an area in your life where you're just ignorant. For me, it's phones, some stuff about cars, anything about computers. I am completely geriatrically ignorant. So you gotta have the compassion. These people just don't know. They've never touched a gun. So you gotta explain these existing laws. Explain to them that getting a fully automatic gun is very different than getting a semi-automatic gun. Explain to them the difference between the two. And also, for a state that doesn't have constitutional carry, explain to them that there's a lot of stuff that somebody has to go through to get that gun permit. Fingerprinting, background check, classes. And for a place with constitutional carry, explain to them that you can't be a convicted felon and partake in constitutional carry. Still, if you get stopped by an officer and they see that you have a gun when you're a prohibited possessor, you're in Schitt's Creek without a paddle at that point. Explain to them these laws that exist already thoroughly, and then you'll be surprised how many of them have no idea that these laws existed. Number 2, armed citizen reports. You got to tell them that there are databases that show that people who are innocent, law-abiding citizens defend themselves, their family, or others with guns. And they do it in a legal way, and they do it when there would have been no other option but them using their gun. To where if they had a can of pepper spray, if they had a bow and arrow, if they had an expandable baton, if they had a taser, they would have been dead. And the gun had to be used in these scenarios. Explain to them that these scenarios are not on the mainstream media. They just flat out don't report them. So you have to go to an NRA website or some pro-gun group like Gun Owners of America or NAGR, National Association of Gun Rights, to really find these databases of armed citizen reports. And that it does happen. In Obviously, the Texas church shooting was an example of somebody who stood up and pursued the bad guy. And there's another church shooting in Tennessee where somebody did that. Now, number 3 is extremely important. It's when you explain to them the ease of training. You explain to them that a person who is a civilian can be trained to use a gun at the same level as somebody in the military or the police. In that this training is not thousands and thousands of dollars to get. It does not take decades to learn how to be safe with a gun and effective with a gun. It's somebody with a really good learning curve can learn how to do this in probably 5 hours with the right trainer. I mean, they'll learn all the rules of gun safety, how to draw from a concealment, how to put shots on target, how to do it all safely and do it all just fully and legally as well. Number 4, the morality of self-defense. You explain to them things like, why should an off-duty police officer be allowed to carry his gun around, but somebody who's a soccer mom who's being stalked by her ex-boyfriend isn't allowed? Why is it that somebody who's very poor and lives in a bad area where they're extremely likely to need a gun? Because see, a lot of people that don't have guns, it's because they don't feel afraid for their life. They move as soon as anything looks a little disheveled or out of place or dangerous in an area that they're living, they move to their extremely quiet suburb where on New Year's Eve it is so quiet, no partying, anything, that you could drop a penny and hear it from a mile away. Well, see, I was raised Jewish. I can hear a penny drop from a mile away. But a non-Jewish person could even hear that penny drop from a mile away. Think about it. They avoid danger. They have these things that they instill into their life to where they don't go out after dark. They don't go to a certain area. They don't live in a certain area. They're all very good things, but still they could be victimized, and they have a moral right to defend themselves. And you explain to it, if somebody is a law-abiding citizen and they own a convenience store, don't they have the right to defend themselves if somebody comes in there wearing a ski mask and toting around a knife, machete, or bat? Or if somebody goes in there with a gun and they find the right time to shoot back for self-defense, don't they have a right to do that? Because the police aren't going to be there. All right? Don't they have a right in that instant to defend themselves? You show the morality of it. Doesn't somebody who is traveling for work have a right to go to another state where they're completely unfamiliar with where the good area and bad area is and carry a little 10-shot handgun? And that's the only gun or ammo they have on them, just a little 10-shot handgun to defend themselves. Number 5 is one that I've actually used on people, is the what would you do argument. You tell them, okay, you're anti-gun, you don't think anybody should have it. What if 3 people broke into your house with bats, machetes, and knives? What would you do? Try to run? What if you couldn't run? Don't you wish you would have had a gun in that situation? Or what if you're out and you needed cash bats, so you're at an ATM and the only ATM was in a really bad area and somebody's approaching you with a knife? What would you do? Wouldn't you wish you had a little 5-shot revolver on you to defend yourself? So you show them these what would you do scenarios. Now, in closing and with an honorable mention, debunk unrealistic Hollywood gun usages. Explain to them how it is easy to be trained to use a gun effectively, but that does not mean that a little J-frame Smith & Wesson can shoot somebody at a mile away. That does not mean that every Glock is full auto. That does not mean you don't even have to aim a gun and all you got to do is sweep a room. Just debunk these Hollywood unrealistic ideas about guns, and that will help them be more comfortable with guns and how realistic it is for a civilian to use them for self-defense. Take care.